Hello friends, everyone wants to be happy, but let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time helping someone else made you feel empty? People often ask, how can I be happy every day? Life is so unpredictable. And I smile, because the problem is not life. The problem is our definition of happiness. We think happiness means everything should go our way, no traffic, no criticism, no failure. But life says, nice idea, but no. Happiness is not the absence of problems. Happiness is the presence of perspective. Let me share a simple example. There was a man who missed his train and got very angry. He shouted, blamed fate, blamed God. Later that day, he found out the train met with a major accident. Suddenly, the same delay that made him angry became the reason he was grateful. The event didn't change, only his understanding changed. Most of our unhappiness comes not from what happens, but from the story we tell ourselves about what happens. Every day, life will give you two bags. One bag is filled with situations you cannot control. The other bag is filled with choices you can control, your response, your attitude, your focus. Wise people drop the first bag and carry the second. We waste so much energy fighting reality. Why me? This should not have happened. But acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is intelligence. When you stop arguing with reality, you save energy, and that energy becomes peace. Another example. Two people are stuck in the same rain. One complains, my clothes are ruined. The other says, the earth is breathing today. Same rain, different minds. Happiness is a mind game, not a life game. If you want to be happy every day, stop outsourcing your happiness to people and situations. If someone's behavior controls your mood, you have handed them the remote control of your life. Take it back. Practice gratitude, not for big things only, but for small things. Breath, food, one peaceful moment. Gratitude trains the mind to see abundance instead of lack. And finally, remember this. Life is a school, not a vacation. Exams will come, lessons will repeat until learned. When you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? Suffering turns into growth. Happiness is not a destination you reach one day. It is a decision you practice every day, especially on difficult days. One of the biggest thieves of happiness in today's world is comparison. And the tragedy is that most people don't even realize when it enters their life. It comes quietly, disguised as motivation, inspiration, or curiosity. You scroll through your phone for just 5 minutes, and suddenly you are watching someone else's success, someone else's perfect body, someone else's luxurious holiday, someone else's smiling family. In that moment, without anyone insulting you or harming you, your peace starts leaking. Nothing in your life has changed in those 5 minutes. Your home is the same, your job is the same, your relationships are the same, but inside something feels missing. This is the silent damage of comparison. We forget that what we are watching is a highlight reel, carefully selected moments of joy, success, and confidence, while what we compare it with is our raw, unfiltered, behind-the-scenes life, our doubts, fears, struggles, and unfinished journeys. Comparing these two is not only unfair, it is deeply harmful to the mind. Happiness cannot survive in a mind that constantly measures itself against illusions. The moment you compare, you stop appreciating your own path, and when appreciation dies, peace slowly follows it. Imagine watching a movie and judging it by pausing only at the climax scenes. You would assume every character lives in excitement, victory, and celebration all the time. But real life is not edited like a movie. Social media, success stories, and public images are edited realities. People do not post their failures, sleepless nights, insecurities, or arguments. They post results, not the process. They post smiles, not breakdowns. When you compare yourself, you are comparing your full documentary with someone else's trailer. And then you wonder why you feel inadequate. This is not because you are lacking. It is because your reference point is distorted. Happiness begins the day you understand this simple truth. Everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. The person you envy today might be struggling with loneliness, pressure, fear of losing everything, or inner emptiness. When you stop assuming that others have perfect lives, you stop insulting your own life unnecessarily. Contentment does not come from having more. It comes from seeing clearly. The clearer your perception, the calmer your heart becomes. Comparison is especially dangerous because it never has a finish line. Even if you achieve what you once envied, the mind will immediately find someone above you. You wanted a better phone, now someone has a better car. You wanted a better job, now someone earns more. You wanted recognition, now someone is more famous. The comparing mind is like a hungry fire. No matter how much you feed it, it asks for more. And a mind that is always chasing more can never enjoy enough. Happiness does not come from winning the comparison game. Happiness comes from quitting it. The most peaceful people are not the most successful ones. They are the ones who know when to stop measuring their worth using external scales. Your journey is unique because your lessons are unique. When you keep comparing, you delay your own growth, because instead of asking, what can I improve today? You keep asking, why am I not like them? Growth-oriented questions bring peace. Comparison-oriented questions bring anxiety. Let us take a simple example. 2 seeds are planted. 1 bamboo seed and 1 mango seed. The mango seed starts growing quickly and bears fruit in a few years. The bamboo seed, however, shows no visible growth for years. If the bamboo seed started comparing itself, it would feel useless, slow and hopeless. But what it doesn't see is that underground it is building deep, strong roots. When the time comes, bamboo grows faster and stronger than most plants. Life works the same way. Some people show success early, others are quietly building foundations. Comparison ignores timing. Happiness respects timing. When you stop rushing your life to match someone else's pace, you begin to breathe again. You stop feeling late. You stop feeling left behind. You realize you are not delayed, you are developing. And this understanding alone removes a huge weight from the heart. Another hidden cost of comparison is that it disconnects you from gratitude. You may have health, supportive parents, loyal friends, food on the table, and opportunities to grow. But comparison blinds you to all of it. The mind becomes obsessed with what is missing instead of what is present. Gratitude and comparison cannot coexist. One makes you feel rich, the other makes you feel poor, regardless of how much you have. When you consciously choose gratitude, comparison automatically weakens. Start noticing small wins, small progress, small joys, a peaceful morning, a lesson learned, a moment of clarity. These may never trend online, but they build inner wealth. Happiness is an inside job, and comparison keeps outsourcing it to the outside world. The day you bring happiness back home to your values, effort, and inner growth is the day peace becomes stable. It is also important to understand that comparison steals authenticity. When you constantly look at others, you start shaping your life based on expectations that are not yours. You chase goals that don't resonate with your soul simply because they look impressive. This leads to a strange kind of success, visible achievement with invisible emptiness. Many people smile publicly but feel lost privately because they lived someone else's dream. Happiness requires alignment between who you are and how you live. Comparison breaks that alignment. When you stop comparing, you start listening to your strengths, your limits, your calling. You begin to move at your natural rhythm. Peace is not found in imitation, it is found in integrity. Living honestly with yourself may not make you the loudest person in the room, but it will make you the calmest. So if you truly want to be happy every day, practice this discipline. Whenever comparison arises, pause and remind yourself, I am seeing only a chapter, not the whole story. Shift the focus back to your lane, your effort, your values, your next step. Life is not a race against others, it is a journey towards self-mastery. The mind that learns to celebrate others without diminishing itself becomes free, and freedom is the foundation of happiness. When you stop comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel, you don't just feel better, you finally feel enough. And a person who feels enough, no matter what happens outside, carries happiness within. The need for approval is one of the earliest habits we learn, and it quietly follows us into adulthood. As children, we are praised when we behave a certain way and corrected when we don't. So slowly the mind learns a dangerous lesson. I am acceptable only when others are pleased with me. This belief does not disappear with age, it only changes its costume. In adulthood, it becomes the need for likes, validation, praise, agreement, and recognition. We begin measuring our worth through reactions rather than reality. The problem is not that appreciation feels good. The problem is when appreciation becomes necessary for inner stability. A person who needs constant approval lives like a house without a foundation, shaking with every opinion, comment, or silence. Peace cannot enter such a life because peace requires inner anchoring. The moment you realize that your worth is not a public vote but an inner truth, something shifts inside. You stop begging silently for permission to be yourself, and that is the first breath of freedom. Most people don't realize how much of their daily stress comes from this invisible pressure to be liked. You think before speaking, not is this true, but will this be accepted? You make decisions not based on values but based on reactions. Over time, this creates a split within. You start living a life that looks acceptable from the outside but feels exhausting on the inside. This exhaustion is the soul's way of saying, I am tired of performing. No matter how carefully you manage your image, someone will still misunderstand you, criticize you, or dislike you. Trying to satisfy everyone is like trying to drink the ocean with a spoon. Endless effort, zero fulfillment. When you accept this reality, not with bitterness but with maturity, peace naturally enters. You stop fighting a battle that was never meant to be won. You understand that disagreement does not mean disrespect, and disapproval does not mean failure. There is a simple but powerful truth most people ignore. Even the most kind, honest, and successful individuals in history were criticized. If perfection could earn universal approval, someone would have achieved it by now. Yet every leader, teacher, artist, and reformer had supporters and opposers. This shows us that approval is not a measure of correctness. It is merely a reflection of preference. When you seek approval, you hand over your emotional remote control to the crowd. Today they clap, you feel high. Tomorrow they criticize, you feel low. Peace, however, comes from emotional independence. It comes when your self-respect is not negotiated in public spaces. You begin to live from principles instead of applause. And living this way does not make you arrogant, it makes you grounded. You listen to feedback without losing yourself in it. You learn without self-hatred. You grow without self-betrayal. Think about how often people silence their own truth just to avoid discomfort. They agree when they don't. They smile when they're hurt. They stay quiet when something feels wrong. All of this is done in the name of keeping peace, but ironically, it destroys inner peace. Real peace does not come from avoiding conflict, it comes from honest alignment. When your thoughts, words, and actions move in the same direction, the mind becomes quiet. This alignment requires courage, the courage to be disliked, misunderstood, or judged. But this courage is rewarded with something far more valuable than approval, self-respect. And self-respect is the soil in which peace naturally grows. When you know you are living honestly, even criticism loses its power. It may still sting, but it no longer defines you. Another important realization is that the desire for approval often hides a deeper fear, the fear of rejection. But rejection is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply a mismatch of expectations. Not everyone is meant to understand you, just as you are not meant to resonate with everyone. Peace arrives when you stop taking rejection personally and start seeing it contextually. A seed rejected by concrete is not worthless, it simply needs soil. When you stop trying to fit everywhere, you find where you truly belong. And belonging that is forced brings anxiety, where the belonging that is natural brings calm. The mind relaxes when it is no longer pretending. Authenticity is not loud, it is peaceful. It does not seek validation, it radiates stability. Let us also understand the difference between humility and people-pleasing. Humility is knowing your strengths without arrogance and your weaknesses without shame. People-pleasing is shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. One is strength, the other is fear. When you constantly adjust yourself to meet expectations, you slowly disappear from your own life. Peace cannot stay where self-abandonment exists. The moment you choose to honor your boundaries, saying no without guilt, expressing truth without aggression, and standing firm without hostility, you feel lighter. This lightness is peace. You realize you are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. You are responsible only for your intentions and actions. This realization removes a massive emotional burden. most people carry unnecessarily. Finally, understand this deeply: your worth was never created by others, so it cannot be destroyed by others. It exists because you exist. When you wake up with this awareness, life feels less heavy. You still care, but you are not controlled. You still listen, but you are not lost. You still improve, but you are not ashamed. Peace is not found in being liked by everyone. Peace is found in being at ease with yourself. And the day you stop asking, do they approve of me? And start asking, am I living with honesty and compassion? Is the day peace stops visiting occasionally and starts living within you. In a world that never stops talking, silence has become unfamiliar, and what is unfamiliar often feels uncomfortable. Most people say they don't have time for silence, but the truth is they are afraid of what they might hear when the noise fades. Daily life is filled with sounds, notifications, opinions, expectations, and mental chatter. The mind rarely gets a pause. Just as the body accumulates physical fatigue through constant activity, the mind accumulates emotional and psychological clutter through constant stimulation. Without silence, this clutter has no exit. It stays, builds, and eventually expresses itself as irritation, anxiety, overthinking, or restlessness. Silence is not emptiness, it is maintenance. When you sit quietly, even for a few minutes, the mind begins to release what it has been holding all day. Thoughts that were screaming slowly start whispering. Reactions soften. You may not feel peaceful immediately, but something important happens. You stop adding new noise. And sometimes not adding more is the first step toward healing what is already there. People often misunderstand silence as inactivity or escape, but true silence is deeply active. It is an internal process, not an external withdrawal. When you intentionally choose silence, you are choosing awareness over distraction. Think of a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, the water remains unclear. If you place it down and leave it untouched, the mud slowly settles and clarity returns. The mind works the same way. Silence allows mental sediments to settle. You begin noticing patterns in your thoughts, what repeats, what triggers you, what drains you. This awareness is powerful because clarity precedes control. You cannot manage what you do not see. Daily silence does not remove problems, it reveals them without panic. And when problems are seen clearly, they lose half their power over you. There is a reason why every ancient wisdom tradition values silence. Before advice, there was stillness. Before action, there was reflection. Silence reconnects you with your inner compass, the quiet voice that is drowned out by constant input. Most of our regrets in life come not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of pause. We react instead of responding. We speak instead of listening. We act instead of reflecting. A few minutes of silence daily create a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, wisdom lies. You may not receive dramatic insights every day, but you will notice something subtle. Your reactions slow down. You don't get pulled into emotional storms as quickly. This is not suppression, it is regulation. The mind becomes like a calm lake instead of a restless ocean. Another important benefit of daily silence is emotional digestion. Just as the body needs time to digest food, the mind needs time to digest experiences. When there is no silence, emotions remain half-processed. Pain lingers, anger hardens, confusion multiplies. Silence allows emotions to complete their cycle. You may feel sadness rise, then fall. You may notice fear, then watch it dissolve. This is not weakness, it is emotional intelligence. When emotions are acknowledged in silence, they don't need to shout through anxiety or outburst later. Many people are not angry because life is hard. They are angry because they never give themselves space to feel and release. Silence becomes a safe container where emotions can breathe and leave peacefully. Silence also strengthens your relationship with yourself. Most people know how to be productive, social, and busy, but they don't know how to be alone without distraction. Silence teaches companionship with the self. You start observing your inner dialogue, how you speak to yourself, how often you criticize, how rarely you appreciate. This observation naturally softens self-judgment. When you sit silently, you are not trying to fix yourself, you are trying to understand yourself. Understanding creates compassion. And compassion toward yourself is the foundation of lasting happiness. A mind that feels heard internally does not crave constant validation externally. This is why people who practice silence regularly feel less dependent on noise, approval, or stimulation. In silence, priorities realign. When the noise fades, what truly matters rises. Problems that once felt massive shrink, and things you were ignoring start asking for attention. Silence acts like an internal audit. You begin to sense when something is out of alignment, whether a habit, a relationship, or a direction. This sensitivity is not confusion, it is clarity developing. Many people feel lost not because they lack direction, but because they never slow down enough to hear it. Silence does not give you answers on demand, it creates the environment where answers can emerge naturally. It teaches patience, it teaches trust. It teaches you that you don't need to force clarity. Clarity comes when the mind is ready to receive it. Finally, daily silence builds inner resilience. Life will always be noisy, demanding, and unpredictable. You cannot control that. But silence gives you a place within that remains untouched. A few minutes of stillness each day create an internal refuge. When chaos comes, you don't collapse because you have practiced returning to calm. Silence becomes a skill, not a luxury. And like sleep, you may not notice its benefits immediately, but without it, the system slowly breaks down. When silence becomes a habit, peace becomes a baseline, not a rare experience. You begin to carry stillness into action, clarity into decisions, and calm into chaos. And that is when silence stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Most people spend a lifetime chasing happiness directly, and yet it keeps slipping away. They chase it through achievements, possessions, recognition, and comfort, believing that once they get enough, they will finally feel fulfilled. But happiness is strange. It rarely comes when it is hunted. It arrives quietly when attention shifts away from the self and toward contribution. The moment life becomes only about what will I get, it becomes heavy, anxious, and fragile. But when life becomes about what can I give, it becomes lighter and more meaningful. Serving others is not about sacrifice in a painful sense, it is about expansion. When you add value, you step out of the narrow boundaries of ego and enter a larger sense of purpose. And purpose has a calming effect on the mind. A mind engaged in meaningful service has little time for self-pity, comparison, or emptiness. Happiness begins to follow not because you demanded it, but because you created space for it. Serving does not always mean grand gestures or dramatic acts. Many people avoid service because they believe it must be extraordinary to matter. But value is added in small, consistent ways. Listening without interrupting, helping without expecting credit, sharing knowledge, offering kindness when it is inconvenient. These actions may look insignificant from the outside, but internally they create a powerful shift. When your actions are useful to someone else, your existence feels justified beyond personal success. This sense of usefulness is deeply nourishing to the human psyche. It tells the mind, I matter because I contribute. And when you feel that you matter, happiness becomes stable rather than conditional. It no longer depends on applause, outcomes, or circumstances. It flows from meaning, and meaning is far more reliable than pleasure. One of the hidden reasons service brings happiness is that it dissolves excessive self-focus. Most mental suffering grows when attention turns inward in an unhealthy way. Constant analysis of one's flaws, worries about one's future, replaying past mistakes. Service gently redirects attention outward. When you focus on easing someone else's burden, your own burden feels lighter, not because it vanished, but because it lost its central position in your mind. This is not avoidance, it is balance. The mind was never designed to revolve endlessly around the self. When it does, it becomes restless and unhappy. Service restores the mind's natural rhythm, connection. And connection is a basic emotional need. A connected life feels alive. An isolated life feels empty. Even if it is successful, serving also brings a quiet form of confidence that no external achievement can provide. When you add value consistently, you develop trust in yourself, not because you are praised, but because you know you are capable of making a positive difference. This inner confidence is not loud or arrogant, it is steady. You stop asking, am I enough? because your actions answer that question daily. This confidence is deeply peaceful because it is earned through effort, not granted by opinion. And when confidence is rooted in contribution rather than comparison, it does not collapse when circumstances change. Happiness that comes from service is brilliant. It does not disappear with failure or criticism because its source is internal alignment, not external reward. Another powerful effect of service is gratitude. When you help others, you become more aware of what you already have: skills, time, energy, understanding. This awareness naturally reduces complaints. Gratitude grows not from positive thinking but from meaningful engagement. When you see life through the lens of contribution, even challenges gain value. Struggles become lessons you can one day share. Pain becomes empathy. Experience becomes wisdom. Suddenly, nothing feels wasted. Happiness grows in this mindset because life starts making sense. You are no longer just surviving days, you are using them. And a life that feels useful feels fulfilling, even when it is imperfect. It is also important to understand that service does not mean neglecting yourself. True service is sustainable. It respects boundaries. It comes from fullness, not exhaustion. When service turns into people-pleasing, it loses its power. But when it comes from intention, I choose to add value where I can, it strengthens you. You begin to see yourself as part of something larger than your own desires. This perspective reduces anxiety because it reminds you that life is not only about personal outcomes. When you are anchored in contribution, setbacks hurt less and successes feel humbling rather than overwhelming. Peace grows because you are no longer carrying the burden of self-importance alone. Ultimately, happiness follows service because service aligns you with life itself. Life is about flow, giving and receiving, effort and impact. When you participate in this flow consciously, happiness becomes a byproduct, not a goal. You may still face difficulties, uncertainty and loss, but beneath it all there is a quiet satisfaction. I am adding value, I am useful, I am connected. This satisfaction does not shout, but it stays, and that is the kind of happiness that lasts. When you stop asking life, what will you give me today? And start asking, how can I contribute today? Happiness no longer needs to be chased. It finds you on its own